On Friday, December 6th, Gary Delabate came to West Hill to share his story about his brother's battle with AIDS. He is the president of a music industry called Lifebeat, and they raise awareness about AIDS.
I can't just stand by and watch my brother die. I called a doctor. I had heard a guy who was on the radio, and he had this, crazy program where you take so many vitamins that it's supposed to, get rid of the disease, which now is ridiculous. But at the time, he had this vitamin C program, and then I found out later that anybody who did it you can actually take too much vitamin C. Anybody in here know who Joan Rivers is? Joan Rivers had a show at the time, and she was on our show quite a bit. She had a guy on her show who was a doctor who brought a patient on who had claimed that this doctor had claimed that he had cured this guy. No one had ever cured anybody. So working with Howard Stern, he said to me, you know what, we're going to call Joan and we're going to get a hold of this doctor and we're going to help your brother get some help. We called Joan. Joan gave us the doctor's number. He never called us back. It probably was a hoax. It probably really wasn't true. But I want to sort of bring you into what a stigma the disease had at the time, because if you had AIDS, everybody's like, I'm backing up. Because and the truth is, you can't really be mad at people at the time, because scientifically there really was no real way to tell what it was. I was on the train one day and I'd gotten all this literature from a doctor about AIDS. So I'm on the subway in New York and I'm looking through this. What does it mean to have AIDS, living with AIDS, and all this stuff? And I'm not really paying attention to what anybody else is doing. I'm just paying attention to me. And I feel like a pair of eyes burning a hole in the back of my head. And I look over there and there's a high school girl standing behind me, and she looks at the literature. She looks at me and she screams to the entire train, "He's got AIDS." And that was really heavy, because at that moment I totally understood what my brother was going through, what it was like to have that. I mean, some of the people on the train stared at me. Some of them backed up. Some of them looked at me with compassion. Some of them looked at me with fear in their eyes, and it was an eye-opening moment. It really was an eye-opening moment to see, to sort of walk for a second in my brother's shoes. My brother became progressively sicker. He lived in New York City. It was Memorial Day weekend, and my dad used to come into the city, and because I lived in the city too, and he would pick my brother and I up, and we'd go home for the weekend to Long Island. And my dad called me and he said, "Something's wrong. I've been calling your brother. He's not answering the phone." So he drove into the city, he picked me up, we got to my brother's apartment, we rang the buzzer. One of those, New York City apartments come in every configuration. So my brother had one of those crazy apartments where you rang the buzzer and he would put the key in a sock and he would come to the window and throw the sock down, and you would take the key and come in the door, and it was a 4-floor walk-up. My brother came to the window and he was like, "I'm sick, I'm too weak." He couldn't even throw the key out the window. So my dad and I climbed up the fire escape, and when we got up the fire escape, my brother was on the floor, naked, sick, too weak to do anything. And so we picked him up, we got him in the shower, we clothed him, and we brought him with us, and we brought him to our home on Long Island. And we realized, he was there for probably about a week or so, and it really became too much for my mother. He was going to the bathroom in his pants. He was getting sick. He was clearly very ill. So we called life. He might have had multiple partners, and so he didn't know what it was going to bring. And I think back then, it was really scary even to people in the gay community. It's sort of like, if I get tested, then I know I'd rather not know. I guess inevitably he did get tested, and I remember getting the call from my older brother. It was after I'd had a Christmas party, and I remember I woke up in the morning, and my brother called me and he said, "Stephen has AIDS." And I remember I felt like I'd gotten hit in the head with a 2x4, because back then, again, it's different now. If you said somebody had AIDS, what you really were saying is somebody's got a disease and they probably don't have a hell of a long time to live. It was a death sentence. It was just no doubt it was a death sentence. There had been no cure, no pills, no cocktail like there is now. And so it became, for my older brother and I, not how is he, how is he going to come out of this? You hear people have cancer, and there's miracle stories. Back then, there were none. If you knew you had AIDS, it was a death sentence. So I spoke to my brother Stephen, and we had a long talk about it, and it was really difficult because, he still looked healthy. So odd to know that you have this disease, and you have it, but you still look perfectly healthy. And so there's a little bit of denial that goes into that. And then we had a discussion about telling my mom and dad, and how is that going to work? And he did not want to tell my mom and dad. And we had a really long discussion about it, and it's one of those things I think about to this day, and I really do feel that we made the right decision. I sat with him and I said, I don't think there's really any good reason to tell mom and dad until you have to tell mom and dad, because there's just nothing they can do. And so why put this worry in them that for such a long time for something that they really have no control over. So it was probably about a year and a half that he had the disease, and my older brother and the three of us knew he had it, but nobody knew how it worked. And he was the first one that I knew that had passed away. And then after that, it just started happening at a really alarming rate. And the kind of thing where every 2 or 3 weeks, I would go to my office and there would be an empty seat at a desk, and I would be like, well, what happened to that sales guy? And they're like, oh, he's in the hospital, he's got AIDS. I was like, holy crap, you'd make a call to a publicist or a manager that you deal with, and you wouldn't get a response. And so you'd be like, well, that guy always returns my call. And then you call back somebody in the office, and they're like, yeah, so-and-so's in the hospital. So I'm trying to really bring to light what a frightening time it was. Talking about my brother was gay. I found out he was gay in 1982. It's one of those really interesting things. So my brother was older than me. I'm the youngest of 3. So I have an older brother who still lives alive, lives in Texas, and my brother Stephen was our middle brother. And I found out he was gay, but it was interesting. We never talked about it, never discussed it. Like one day, I knew, he knew I knew, and that was it. We never talked about it. We were very close. He lived in the city, and I would go to Manhattan all the time. We would go to the movies. He led a great life. And my older brother and I always talked about the AIDS thing as like, well, we know we have a gay brother. It's something that could happen. So it was always sort of on our radar.